Hello and welcome to another episode of Empathy at the Table. Today we're thrilled to have Stynes with us, a seasoned coach renowned for his expertise in cultivating authentic leadership and fostering psychological safety. In this conversation, we delve into the art of navigating conflict positively. We'll unpack that paradox that many companies face, the desire to innovate versus the fear of failure. How can leaders foster an environment that embraces risk and nurtures innovation? Today, join us as Stephen shares his wealth of experience with us. So whether you're a leader looking to enhance your skills or someone interested in personal growth, this episode is packed with practical wisdom you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Stephen Stynes. Good morning.
Tony, how are you?
Very good, Stephen. So, Stephen, let's jump straight in. Thank you for joining us, Empathy at the Table. Tell us a bit about what you do and what's your offering to the world.
Thanks, Tony. Really happy to be here. So I am a coach. I work with entrepreneurs and corporate leaders, providing coaching and workshop facilitation. And I've been doing that now for almost 15 years full time. Prior to that, I had my own business in digital marketing, and then I worked for a couple of multinationals before that. But yes, for about the last 15 years, coaching and facilitation for individuals and for teams.
And your work is around, a lot of it is around psychological safety, looking at conflict and what conflict can do in companies, in organizations. Can you share with us a little bit about, firstly, why did that attract you?
Sure. So I've always been a student of human nature. So it's always fascinated me from a personal development perspective. And so when I started in the world of leadership development and coaching, that whole area of inner game has been the part that's always really interested me. And specifically around awareness of what we're doing. So we live in an environment that's so focused on action. And it's always been of interest to me that when we shift the focus from action to awareness, how things can change. And so my work over the years has really been focused on helping people to become more aware. Because if you think about it, direction is much more important than speed. And if you can have the fastest car, but it's only going to get you to where you don't want to go much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so focusing in on awareness and helping people to understand the importance of developing, as I refer to it, their inner game, is a passion area for me personally, and I'm still on that journey. And I find that that's where my work most resonates.
Well, what I like about what you're saying, Stephen, is you really are dealing on the granular level, right? You hear a lot of talk about organizations must be this, or organizations or companies or people, but you're dealing with the cold front, right? You're dealing with the individuals, and you're dealing with that on a really granular level. So what are you seeing when you are engaging with these leaders in these positions? What are you seeing in terms of their attitudes towards conflict in their teams?
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around conflict, and what I mean by that is that it's too often seen as something that's negative. And particularly in organizations that are looking to be innovative, that are looking to change the way they do things. There's an opportunity to see conflict in a much more positive light. Most of the great ideas that have ever been developed tend not to be intuitive for most people. And so I was fortunate to work in a great company some years ago, HP, and I was responsible for marketing at a global level. And I experienced what it's like to propose to do things in a very different way. Around that time, digital was becoming was becoming a real force, and I experienced firsthand what that's like when people feel threatened by ideas that they don't fully understand. And
Mm.
then what we do, we become defensive because we're confronting the unknown. And so I try to work with leaders and teams to help them to embrace the idea of conflict within innovation being something that's positive as opposed to something that's necessarily negative. And it's a huge area as well for entrepreneurs. So for startups and scale ups,
Mm.
being able to move forward, move ideas forward in a way that's positive.
Mm. Yeah, there's an interesting dichotomy there, isn't there? In that you want your teams and companies to be innovative, and by dint of that, they need to be making mistakes. They need to be going out there and trying and testing things. But then you have this avoidance of conflict, right? So the two are diametrically opposed, right? And I mean, why do you think that is in the companies? Why do you think we see this fear of failure, but a drive for innovation just nestling together?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's in many cases you're trying to hold two opposites.
Mm.
You're trying to move towards something that's unknown, uh, but at the same time there can be an awful lot of fear around what the consequences are of getting something wrong. So small failures are okay, but big failures for a lot, well, it's not okay. I mean, it's not good to fail. I mean, this whole thing about entrepreneurs, oh, go out and fail. Failing sucks. So you do want to avoid it, and then also look at the way we've all been educated. I mean, none of us
Mm.
were educated to that the failure was okay. I mean, it's just we're not wired for it. So being able to embrace the idea of trying something new, trying something that's different, and being open to it not working is something that it's a journey for all of us. Yeah,
Mm.
journey for
Mm.
all of us, and it speaks to how do we process the world, how do we engage with people, what's the quality of our inner game, and what's the quality of our levels of consciousness and awareness versus just taking actions.
Yeah, I want to bring the conversation to the inner game. You've mentioned that, and generally in our discourse, this comes up a lot, right? The inner game. I remember you telling me the story of when you went to a conference, and you went to a conference because you wanted to work on your outer game. You wanted to scale up your company. You wanted to make it bigger, better, and stronger. And you were really surprised with, number one, the content that was being presented, but more interestingly, you were surprised at your reaction. Can you share that with the listeners?
Sure. Yeah. I had a digital marketing company, and we had been running for about 5 years, and we were doing well. We were one of the first. We were one of the first digital marketing companies in Europe, and but I wanted to scale the business, and I kept hitting this ceiling, this revenue ceiling. 2 years and then 3 years in a row, kept hitting this revenue ceiling, couldn't get past it. And so I decided to look outside and get some help. So I went to a conference in the US for entrepreneurs, and I was looking for strategies because action, right? So I need to take different actions in order to scale the business beyond the next level. And the speaker, who was Tony Robbins, I went to the Tony Robbins Entrepreneur. There were over 1,000 entrepreneurs. On the first day, he stood up and he drew this diagram. And he wrote three circles, and he wrote story, date, and strategy. And I thought, great, strategy, that's why we're here. And then he drew a line down the middle and he said, 80% of your success is going to be based on story you tell yourself and the state that you're in and how you manage your own state, and 20% or less is strategy. And I was like, no, I want strategy. I came for strategy. And so it took me a while and as you say, my reaction was so strong to that I realized that there was something there for me to learn. Because often when something confronts us, and it has that strong reactions because there's something there to learn. And I really learned at that point that it is true that the stories that we tell ourselves, which is back to inner game again, and then also our ability to manage our own state, our own mental, our own physical, our own emotional state, is the key to anything, whether it's personal or whether it's professional. And the strategy is a minor part. It's how we do things more than what we do, like again to awareness versus action. Yeah.
Mm. And I'm going to make a statement, and I'd just like your reaction to this
Okay.
statement. we manage our emotions or our emotions manage us?
Hmm. I think, and I can speak personally here, that there's often a tendency to process emotions, which doesn't necessarily allow us to feel them. And I think it's important. I think it's important to be aware of whatever emotions we have, because sometimes what we can do is we feel an emotion coming up, we don't want it. So when I say process it, we push it away. And while we don't want to operate exclusively from emotions, we need to have a balance, because without some level of emotion, we don't have empathy, right? We don't have compassion. So I think it's a question of learning to work with them, as opposed to either allowing them to run us or to eliminate them completely and try to be too in our heads.
Hmm. Hmm. So that sounds really interesting as words. How do you actually put that into practice? How would you, in situations where you have to make fast decisions and you are playing not to lose because there's a lot of pressure, how do you actually learn to manage, recognize, and process those emotions all in real time?
So a lot of it will depend on the context, but let's say, for example, in the area that you specialize in, negotiation, if you're in a situation where you are dealing with someone and there's an exchange of opinions, or maybe there is even a difference of opinion. For me, the first and most important thing is intention,
Hmm.
is knowing very clearly what your own intention, not end result, not end result, intention. What is my intention in this conversation? And also, do I know, and has the other party been clear on what their intention is?
Hmm.
Again, not result, but what's the intention? And if it's not possible to know what the other person's intention is, that's a red flag for me,
Hmm.
because there's a danger of a hidden agenda. So I think if we can talk about my intention is, then there's much greater and richer opportunity to come to an agreement and to have more of a positive exchange. And intention, focusing on intention, allows us to be transparent, but also takes that pressure off about focusing on one specific result.
Yeah.
It's that whole area of focusing on interests rather than focusing on
Yeah.
position. So
Yeah.
intention for me is so important in everything. To be clear about what our intention is, and
Yeah.
then to see if we can understand the intention of the other party.
I really love that point. And I don't think you can um, overestimate how important it is, that
Yeah.
idea of intention. And I think the challenge a lot of people face, and I certainly see this when I'm working with leaders around the idea of emotionally intelligent negotiation, is that they haven't done the work to figure out what their intentions are, right? So they
Yeah.
don't really know. They just know they want more than is on the table, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't actually know what they want, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And intention brings a huge amount of transparency and honesty to a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Huge amount. And you talked earlier about psychological safety. It's so important to be able to create psychological safety. And the best way to do that is in any conversation, particularly difficult conversations, to say, look, my intention in this conversation is, and then to say, and it's probably going to be difficult for both of us, but
Mm.
I put my intention on the table. That's a very different scenario from, as you say, somebody who doesn't know what their intention is. They just
Yeah.
know they want more, and so you have conflict from
Yeah.
the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just building on that, it helps you navigate the conversation, because if you feel it going off key, you can always come back to say, this is actually straying away from what my
Exactly.
intention was, right? So it gives you
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, it's very, very good, very good. And so when you look at the work that you do,
Mhm.
and you work with leaders, you work with scale up startups, what kind of reaction do you get when you bring this framework of thinking and this framework of acting? What kind of reactions do you hear from them?
Um, Mixed.
Mm,
Uh, there, for me, it is a question of what is the level of consciousness of the person. And that's not a criticism, but it's for me to try to understand what is that individual's levels of consciousness about themselves.
mm,
Some people are very conscious of themselves, and others are not. And so your first job is to try to meet them where they're at. And so to find out, to meet them where they're at, to be able to work with them and have a conversation from where they realistically are.
mm,
And one of the things that
mm,
I often say is that the best coaches or the best leaders is somebody who's just one step or two steps ahead of you,
mm,
who's sharing where they're at.
mm.
Because you can relate to that. Often, if we meet gurus and experts, they're just so far away. Just the gap is too big. So I look to try and meet people where they're at first of all, and then work from there.
Yeah. I also remember you telling me, and this really stuck with me, where you were in a workshop and you had been tasked with providing some details on strategy. And you had built the workshop, everything was good to go. And you looked at it and you said to yourself, I won't be being my authentic self if I don't share what's working for me, right? The inner game. If I don't
Mhm.
share this with this group, then I won't be being my authentic self. Um, can you share a little bit about the context of how that happened and what was the reaction?
Yeah, I think you're referring to when I lived in South America and I was doing a workshop in Colombia. Did some work for the Colombian government in Tulsa. We were doing leadership 5-day sessions around Colombia, and I realized that I had been meditating for over 20 years and working on my own self-awareness and self-development, and I realized that none of the program was reflecting any of that. And a question that was asked to me in a coffee break by one of the participants was, "What's the most important thing you've ever learned? And is there one thing that stands out?" And I remember sharing with him that for me personally, learning to become more self-aware through meditation has been the thing that's helped me. Meditation and mindfulness has been the thing that helped me. And there was nothing about that in the program. And I went away from that conversation thinking, I think I'm a fraud.
Mm,
Particularly because these were entrepreneurs with growing companies, and I thought I'm not actually sharing what I'm learning and what's working for me. And that was a big moment of reflection. And from then, I took a real step back and decided, no, I want to share what's working for me and what I'm
mm.
learning. It felt more authentic, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah, this feeds into. I was thinking, shall I say this on the podcast? Would you really be happy for me to share this? But you've kind of opened the door. Um, you're a maverick, Stephen. You're the history that you've had when it's when you were working in the corporate world, when things happen and you don't agree with them and they go against what you absolutely believe in. You've never been afraid to walk away and to state your case. And I mean, I know you. And I've known you to do this where you've been handed a set of slides and you've been said, right, told this is what you're going to talk about. This is what we want you to share. And you've looked at it and you've taken a read of the room and you've said, I'm actually not going to talk about that. This is what I feel the room needs. And this is me being authentic. And it's always worked for you. So what's the thought process that allows you to really stand in what you believe to be true and connect with the audience? What's the thought process behind and how's it been so successful?
Um, I'm not sure it's a thought process. I think it's more energetic. I think it's a feeling of what feels right. And one of the big challenges that we all have, and I certainly have, is to not spend too much time in my head and
Mm,
to actually, to feel what's right. What's my intuition saying? What's my gut saying? What feels like it would be the right thing to do? And and as you would know, in facilitation, particularly with groups, something can emerge, and it's very important to be able to go with that. And that's a feeling, and I try to be as open to that as possible, and try to be as genuine and authentic to that as possible. And sometimes it means, sometimes it means trying out the script and seeing where it goes. Yeah.
Hmm. There's a question that you asked me that still haunts me till today. And when I say haunts me in a really good way, because I ask myself this question all the time, and it was, what does your inner game look like? And I remember coming to you because I had all of these issues, and I was, I had these goals that I was setting myself. And you just said, so what does your inner game look like? And what was powerful about the question was silence.
Mhm.
And then we went on to talk about our relationship with silence.
Mhm.
When you talk about, when you think about silence, and let's put it in the context of the workplace, of the leaders that you're working with, how can we use silence to our advantage?
Okay. For me, it comes down to the distinction between self-improvement and self-discovery. So there's so much emphasis, particularly in the corporate world and with our careers, on self-improvement. So many things that we feel that we need to learn, so many skills that we want to add, and it's this kind of horizontal development. My own experience and my own journey has been that the greatest strides forward are from self-discovery. So going inside, and the only way you can truly go inside is to have time to yourself.
Hmm.
In silence, and to spend time understanding what's actually going on for you, what's coming up for you, and whether that's true. It can be meditation, it can be mindfulness practices, or it can be something as simple as just making sure that you have the time by yourself, not with your headphones, not with other people, because there's so much knowledge that we have
Hmm.
that we don't tap into often enough. And so for me, that inner game is about investing time and creating time to be with ourselves so that we can know ourselves better and then show up better when we're working with other people.
Hmm.
And it's hard for a lot of people. Sometimes when I work with individuals or groups, they've never spent any time
Yeah.
by themselves. And it was once said, Blaise Pascal said that the hardest thing for anyone to do is sit in a room in silence for 20 minutes
Hmm.
by themselves. But once you get to do that, it once you learn how to do that, it releases. I really believe it releases something in us when we're able to sit with ourselves, and we're able to sit with whatever it
Yeah.
is. And sometimes it's really unpleasant. So it's often like somebody once referred to it as, it's like going into a bad neighborhood. You don't want to go there, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
but when you're able to do that and confront it, it does release something in us. It's very
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
You shared with me, you just come back off a 10-day silent retreat, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was that like?
That's a wonderful experience. Silence for me is the greatest teacher, and nature is the greatest classroom. So I'm very privileged every year to be able to take some time out to do a silent retreat in the mountains down in the Sierra Nevada, and it's 7 days alone. So no reading, no writing, a little bit of journaling, and just being with yourself. It's a wonderful, wonderful gift to have to
Yeah.
do.
I guess it's heaven if you love yourself. It's hell if you don't.
Well, I think it's about getting to know yourself,
Hmm.
and you get to find parts of yourself that you didn't know were there. You get to visit things that maybe happened a long time ago that we're holding. I really think it's if anybody's thinking about doing it, I would recommend you do it in stages. I don't recommend that somebody goes and tries to do 7 days or 10 days, 10 days
Hmm.
alone. I think you have to build up
Yeah. Yeah.
that ability to be able to sit with your thoughts, because sometimes some of the things that come up can be quite
Yeah.
deep and quite troublesome. But yes, it's a wonderful experience, and it's just so ironic that we spend so much time learning courses and books, but then to go and do the exact opposite. I think I learn more in 7 or 10 days on a silent retreat than I do in a whole year reading books. So it's
Wow.
kind of an interesting paradox.
That's a great perspective. That's a great perspective. Yeah. And I guess, a lot of, when you look at some of the greatest leaders, the one thing they have in common is they do spend that time, alone time with themselves, journaling, for themselves, not for anyone else, but for themselves. So yeah, there is definitely some grains of importance there. Stephen, when I hear the saying, a ship sinks because the water gets in the ship, not because the ship's in the water, I always think of you, because you have this really beautiful, calming influence wherever you go. I've seen you in potentially very stressful situations, teaching, working with people who are stressed out, and you kind of just bring this beautiful air of equanimity to everything you do. Is this learned behavior, or is this naturally who you are?
I would say it's more learned behavior with years and maturity and gray hair. Yeah.
So there's hope for us all.
For sure. For sure.
Great. Well, Stephen, as we come to the end of our conversation, which I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I knew I would, what's the big thing you're working on, and how can our listeners find you?
So the thing that has me most enthusiastic right now is about a year and a half ago, I started conversations with people around how entrepreneurs can scale themselves faster. And one of the challenges that I identified was that the percentage of entrepreneurs, and when I say entrepreneurs, I mean startups, scale-ups, who feel that they can dedicate the time to develop themselves and not do it from a perspective of guilt is so low. So few entrepreneurs have a coach. I think the most recent research that I saw was 25% of entrepreneurs or business owners have ever had a coach or a therapist, for that matter, somebody to help them to be able to process. And what occurred to me was that linked to that the business model for venture capital makes no sense to me, and I'm not a financial expert. And what I mean by that is that the model, and I have some friends who are very influential in the VC world and have funds, and I started having this conversation saying, it makes no sense to me that your model is that you place 10 bets and you expect one of them to pay off the other 9 as failures. And so you're looking for the guy or the guys who are going to be most resilient and able to go the distance, and then you're going to focus on those, and then the rest can fall by the wayside, and it makes and you don't mind. And for me, that makes no sense at all, particularly given the way that so much investing is now impact investing. And so I started to have conversations with people about what would happen if VC funds dedicated 1% of their investments in the entrepreneurs, in the people, and that at each review of the business, like monthly or quarterly, it's not just about the review of the business, it's also about what's happening in relation to your development. So let's talk about scaling the company, but now we also want to talk about scaling yourself, because the number one reason why startups and scale-ups fail is because the owner or the owners of the leadership team were unable to guide and chart the business. So we are working on a project called Impact One. And I'm having conversations with VCs, both in Latin America and in Europe. Already have 2 signed up, and to make the commitment that when they invest in companies, that they would invest or dedicate 1% of the funds to the personal development of the entrepreneurs and then the teams. And then by definition, that will enable more great coaches like you and the other people who have been on your program to work with great entrepreneurs to actually help them, so that the ecosystem works better than it currently does right now. So that's what has me most excited and interested.
Sounds fantastic. So where can people hear more about that? Where can they find out the information?
So you can find out more on my website, stephenstynes.com. You can also check out my LinkedIn profile.
Very good. Links will be in the program notes at the end. Stephen, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure. And as I said, I knew it would be. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Tony, for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us today. As we wrap up today's thought-provoking episode, we leave with a deeper understanding of the intricate dance between our emotions and our actions. We thank Stephen for sharing his wisdom, and if you've enjoyed the episode or found value in our conversation, please like, share, and subscribe to Empathy at the Table. Your support really helps us to continue to bring meaningful content your way.